boring old men, chat it up, coming to you from Bulkheady, Panama!
All right.
And we're on. So, this podcast, we're going to be talking about our 5 favourite movies. I don't know what Jeff's going to pick. He doesn't know what I'm going to pick. And I ask any of you out there to try and pick 5 favourite movies and see how difficult it is. I've juggled mine around and I've got some that didn't quite make the top 5. Before we go on, just because a movie is picked at number 5 doesn't mean it's a poor movie, you know. You've got to imagine we're doing a top 100, but here's our top 5. Anything you want to add there, Jeff?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. My wife, when she heard that we're going to do this, she knew my top 5 right off the bat.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because she knows how much I love these movies,
Yeah.
right? And made her watch, talk about philosophy about them and stuff like that. So she knew, but I traded one out that I always liked and put a newer one in, just because it's a newer movie.
Right.
And it shocked me. And
Okay.
and anything that kind of late at night blows you away, and all of a sudden now you're wide awake watching.
Yeah.
Has something to it.
Yeah, so the question that I emailed Jeff earlier in the week, and I said, let's do one about movies and base it around you're on a desert island, you've got electricity, you've got a TV and a DVD player. What 5 DVDs are you bringing with you? So let's start off with Jeff. Number 5, Jeff.
All right. Okay. I don't have my glasses on, so. My number 5, Wild Dark, is Apocalypse Now.
Okay.
And it receives 8.4 on IMDb. It was made in 1979 by Francis Ford Coppola. Martin Sheen's in it, Marlon Brando, Robert Duvall, Dennis Hopper, and then probably a few more. And the movie is really based out of the novel Heart of Darkness. And Heart of Darkness falls into existential literature. And I took 2 semesters of existential literature. And
just for the benefit of the listeners or those watching on YouTube, explain existential.
The main movement was to move away from the old Victorian values and morality and stuff like that. Yes, we can wear a bikini. They were asking questions. Why can't we do this, right? And the cast iron furniture you always see in people's front yard.
Yeah,
they're not comfortable, but they look good. And the Victorian era, they would choose form instead of function, or form first, and how you look and stuff.
Surface wealth.
Yeah, so existential, and at the same time, Freud is saying, we have this unconscious, we really don't know what's going on underneath, and that freaked the Victorians out, right? Like, what? And yet Nietzsche saying God is dead, you make up your own morality. So there was a lot grooving at that point in time. And they called it existential. Kafka was part of the movement. And but mainly it was a break from Victorian era.
So there was it was Vietnam, right?
Uh, this one, the novel was written in the early 1900s, and it was going down the Congo. Um, they mirror the movie mirrored it as going down the river to Cambodia, which we're not supposed to be in during the Vietnam War. So it's the Vietnam War. They're going down the river, just like the novel. And matter of fact, both of them are going after General Kurtz explicitly. In both the novel, his name is Kurtz, and in the movie, his name is Kurtz.
What?
And really, it's let me see if my notes. Yeah, it's really a travel into the self, like the heart of darkness. We like to think we are all civilized, blah blah blah, and so in both the novel and the movie, as they travel down the river, things get crazier, crazier, chaotic, madness, and it just keeps up ramping up the madness and chaos. And then there's absurd things you'd see. They had playmates from Playboy visit the troops, which ended in chaos. The guys were going absolutely apeshit over the girls.
There was a great soundtrack to that movie as well, as I recall, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Some Hendrix and people
the
like
Doors, the end was at the beginning, So as the beginning of the movie is just the end, the Doors, and they're showing people napalming and napalming and napalming, and then the assassin Martin Sheen is in his hotel room waiting for his assignment, going crazy, and he's having a breakdown, clearly, and a drunken breakdown, and in real life. So there's a documentary about making Apocalypse Now and all the screwed up shit that happened during the movie. So yeah. So the farther they go, the darker it gets. Yeah. And so there's this General Kurtz who is a general, and he started doing paratrooping at the age of 40, which was strange, right? A general doing that, right? So he kind of started doing strange things. And then when he was let loose into Vietnam, he disappeared completely. And the orders to Martin Sheen is they put it in a way I can't remember, but to kill him. Right? Judicial something, and Harrison Ford said it. He's so young in the movie. And so Kurtz is in the middle of Cambodia doing God knows what. They have to travel into Cambodia, which we're not supposed to be there. And I have a neighbor who actually, during Vietnam, they had a mission to go into Cambodia secretly. No one knew about it. And they did something and got the hell out, So General Kurtz. And so, the end goal is to get General Kurtz. In the novel, it's to bring him back. In the movie, it's to kill him. And
how many times have you seen?
Oh God, I can't.
Apocalypse,
Yeah, I can't.
Lost count.
Can't even
So that's
imagine.
always, for me, that's always a sign of a good movie if you keep watching it over and over again. And it just. I always try and watch a movie that I've seen a zillion times, thinking that this is my first time watching it.
Yeah.
That's what I always do. And you know, I watch a lot of reaction videos on YouTube. You know, kids listening to songs of my era or watching movies of my era, and I love to see their reaction. And
Maybe we should do reactions of new
I,
music.
I'd love to,
Yeah.
but
What is this shit?
it's the copyright problem. I can't figure out how to
that's
get
right.
around it, whereas these can. There is a way, but it takes a lot of
Yeah.
you know, downloading and reversing and slowing down and stuff like that. So I don't know if we'd get away with it on YouTube or Spotify for that matter. By the way, like and subscribe, because the more likes that we get and subscriptions that we get, which is free on YouTube, the higher the rankings we go. And we really want to push this out there. And, you know, once we sort of like become established, we can start doing local stuff, you know.
So when I was doing these, you know, I got the facts of the movie, you know, who did it, who's in it, what year, how, you know, how it was received, and then themes. And for the themes for this, one is madness. Two, it's a journey into the heart of ourselves. And Joseph Conrad, who wrote the book Heart of Darkness, you know, he means you go into your heart and you're going to find, you know, good shit, but you're going to find some very bad
Dark stuff.
stuff.
Yeah.
And as you traverse the movie or the book, it just gets absolutely insane. And darkness beyond all recognition. I mean, how crazy it gets. Another theme is the emptiness of American values. So we're fighting the Vietnamese, they're fighting for their homes. But in the movie, it shows us surfing, right? Charlie doesn't surf. That's where that comes from. Playmates out in the middle of the jungle, psychedelic rock while fishing and stuff. So I compare that, the emptiness of, you know, they're doing this in the war. I compare it to what Joseph Conrad was doing with the Victorian era, right? Is all that shit is empty.
Is this your take on it, or that's the general consensus of Apocalypse Now?
It's one of the themes of Apocalypse Now. But when I was taking existential literature and we were reading Heart of Darkness, you know, my professor was trying to say, is it all right if you had a glass of wine for lunch? Right? And no one would say anything, right? Because we don't want to say it. And he keeps pushing us, saying, well, it's all right to have a glass of wine in the morning. I mean, why not, right? And so one, he's trying to get us to question our values, but it's also pushing against the emptiness of the Victorian values, which are completely made up, right? Corsets, you know, you don't show ankles,
Yeah.
you know, all sorts of crazy shit that, you know, is really doesn't add value to your life, right? And is emptiness. And so the movie, it shows the Americans in their emptiness while the Vietnam are fighting for their lives. These guys are having fun and also killing people, right? And it's just absurd. And as you watch the movie or read the book, you go down, and the absurdity of it all is just out of this world. And you know, detachment, a journey, accountability, innocence, and insanity, which is the last. So basically, I'm not going to go into the journey itself because it's vast, and there's actually two. There's a director's cut. Which is like 3+ hours.
And what was the original, you know, cinema release?
The shorter one, But when I watched the director's cut, so the French were involved in Vietnam long before we were, and they even warned us, "Don't go to Vietnam." Which,
Was this the Foreign Legion or was it the actual
you know,
French military? Or
I imagine I couldn't tell you, but the French took on the Vietnamese first, lost, and just said, "Don't do it." And in the director's cut, so this is part of the absurdity. They're past the point of no return, right? They all took acid one night. Bridge is being built. There's lights all like Christmas lights all over. People are bombing each other across the river, and it's nighttime, and they're trying to. And Martin Sheen's character, who's the leader of this boat, says, "Who's in charge?" And the soldier goes, "There's nobody in charge, right? We're just,
it's a free for all.
It's a crazy land, right?" And, and then even further on down the line, you're in Cambodia. The helicopter crashed with the Playmates. So they are so deep in this dangerous area, and they come across a helicopter that's down, and all the Playmates come out of these tents. It's absurd, right? And they trade fuel for the guys to sleep with the Playmates, so the Playmates can get the hell out of hell, you know. But could you imagine if you're traveling down and you're in enemy territory, you're expecting all hell to break loose, and you're having sex with Playmates?
And these were Vietnamese
No.
hookers.
No, they were actual centerfold. One was a centerfold Playboy.
But
Right.
but in real life, this never happened in Vietnam, right?
Well, no, any war, celebrities will go over.
Yeah, so,
Marilyn
yeah.
Monroe did
Yeah.
and stuff like
Morale
that.
and stuff like that. Yeah, Vera Lynn did it to our troops in the Second World War.
And so the girls, these Playboy bunnies, did it, and it just resulted in chaos when the guys watch. I mean, the guys are so far gone that they're attacking the helicopter, they're attacking the girls. The girls just want to get the fuck out of there. It flies off, but then it's encountered later. But that's the extended cut. And then past that, they're going down. All of a sudden, in the woods or jungle, they see this huge mansion. I mean, a huge, beautiful mansion where nothing is supposed to be, and it ends up being a French family who was there as part of the French War. And they go in, and these guys have porcelain. Again, it's the Victorian, right? They have porcelain teacups with lacy coasters. In the middle of this jungle is all these nice things that I don't even have. But then that shows the Victorian side where, this isn't the place for this shit. And the fact that you're here doing this is crazy land, right? And, but they justify it as this is our home. We fought for it and blah, blah, blah. But, I guess Vietnamese and everyone else just leaves them alone, but they're on their own, but they're still upholding those old values where, they shouldn't.
So when was the last time you actually watched that movie?
Probably about a year ago or so.
Okay. So you'll due another watch at some point.
Yeah. There was one movie on here I thought I should watch again, but I decided not to.
Okay, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a bit.
So basically, they finally get to Kurtz, and it's a pyramid temple, and Kurtz lives on the top of this temple. They pull up, and there's this indigenous tribe all standing there with weapons and spears. And also, there's heads on stakes, human heads on stakes everywhere, hundreds, right? So human killings and sacrifices and everything else was just off the wall. No limits, right? So and then there's Dennis Hopper, who is a photographer, and he keeps trying to explain the man, the Kurtz, and try to justify, yeah, he may go off a little too far, but he's righteous, man. He knows what he's doing, blah, blah, blah. And, and you're looking around with heads on sticks and shit. I don't know. This is a little bit, but again, remember, this is a journey, a road movie or a river movie into your own heart, right? And so, yeah. So Kurtz has gone mad. Everyone knows it. And Martin Sheehan looks in his journal and, he has typings, information about Vietnamese, blah, blah, blah. He has a huge portfolio that he thought, but written over it was drop the bomb, kill everybody. Just flat out
Jesus.
wipe out, right? And so one of the craziest things that happens is the indigenous. So this was taking place they filmed it in Philippines, and they had to pay 2 ox to the indigenous to use their land to film this. And one night the indigenous do a ritual with one of the ox, and there's drumming and chanting and fires and madness, and the guy with a huge machete almost decapitates the ox in one blow. I mean, and it's real.
Bloody hell.
And Coppola was there, and this was the indigenous ritual. This is what they do. And he couldn't interfere, so you end up just taping it and incorporating it in. So, when you hear no animals got hurt, animals got hurt, but it was by a religious,
that's their thing,
and they really did kill them. And
who are we to intervene when, something's been going on probably for thousands of years, that is their ritual. So what year was it made again?
1979.
So I must confess, I've never seen it. I'm not really a big fan of war movies. I did like The Great Escape; that was fun. But I've not seen that movie. But I'll definitely watch it.
Yeah.
You've mentioned what you've mentioned.
When I was reading Heart of Darkness, I got anxiety.
Wow.
Right? Because it's pushing, right? And I took 2 semesters of existential literature. And the professor who is famous, he kept pushing us. What do you guys think? What is right and wrong? What are your values? Blah, 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 And this movie gave me, anxiety, like, holy shit, is this at the heart of everybody? Blah, blah, blah. Cinematography, great. Soundtrack, great. Hendrix, Doors, blah, blah, blah. But the way he captures going down the river and capturing the increasing madness and increasing absurdity of it all, it blew my mind. And so, ending off this, they have a documentary on making of Apocalypse Now, right? So this is what happened during the film. everyone got dysentery, health problems right off the bat. A Filipino woman was killed by a log right off the bat.
Right.
Martin Sheen had a heart attack and had to be revived and was given last rites during the movie.
And
he
he
was
he'd kind of been old in '79. He's old now.
Well, he was
Martin Sheen,
younger than us.
Yeah.
But
Heart attack.
but he was also taking a huge amount of acid,
Right.
right? So, I mean, it was crazy town, right? Even making the movie was crazy town, right? So Martin Sheen is dropping acid, has a heart attack, tripping, given last rites, ends up coming back, and he said he was really having a nervous breakdown during the first scene, which he punches a mirror. It's his own blood. And in reality, he was trashed during this scene. And he was supposed to be, well, he was. And it was him having a breakdown at that time of his life. When they got to the temple of these indigenous people, they ended up finding a pile of bodies, a huge pile of bodies. So many that the Philippine authorities had to come and do a murder investigation because they're like, who are these people? What are they doing? Who the hell killed them? And they never solved it. So right when they got there, dead bodies, madness, whatever. And then Brando shows up totally unprepared, reads the script in a couple days, and then he comes out and his head is completely shaven, right, which wasn't called for. And Coppola said, that is General Kurtz right there, and he was overweight, and as Marlon Brando got older, and the film took place during a real war in the Philippines. So, it's number 5
On
on my list.
do you know where it is on IMDb?
No, I should look.
Not that it really makes
No.
much of a difference anyway.
But they do have top 250
yeah,
top films.
and it's obviously
And the reason this means so much to me is, one, I read the novel. I was very much into existential literature. The filming, he captured the absurdity, the increasing madness, and then the apex when they get there, it is insane, right? And he doesn't bring General Kurtz back. He's there to kill him. In the novel, he's bringing General Kurtz back. And the last words in the book, General Kurtz says, the horror. That's all he says, right? And so when we look inside ourselves and see how, like, General Kurtz is a good guy, multi-medals, blah, blah, blah. But when you get down to it, you look into yourself, the horror.
why was there why was they told to kill him? Did he have something on the government or?
No, he was, well, one, he was in Cambodia, which he wasn't supposed to. 2, he was not reporting back.
Right.
They heard rumors of what the hell he was doing. And even when they were hiring Martin Sheen, they said he has gone off the deep end.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're given so much freedom, what does a human do? Especially when the indigenous people look to you as a god, and if you fall for it, it gets crazy. And if you don't fall for it, you probably get the hell out and leave them alone and shit, But it is, so the book left an impression on me. The movie left an impression on me in the same way. And knowing the self, knowing yourself. And we all like to think we're good people, nice people, which we really are socially, right? I go out in society. I don't expect to be hit behind the head, or there's a lot of trust when we go out in public, right? And you know, both these mediums show that the dark, and we hear about this a lot in people in prison. Jealousy. The guy never did anything wrong, but he got jealous and boop, killed his wife, or whatever, you know. And almost everybody that I read, psychologists and prisoners, they all say we are capable of the darkest shit, right? And a lot of people want to ignore that. The Victorians ignored it. I just think it's a point of self-discovery.
Well, I suppose in the military as well,
Eesh.
you're trained for that, so you're trained to kill and almost to feel no feelings about the person that you've just like stabbed with a bayonet or shot,
Yeah.
through the head and stuff like that. That is all part of the training, and that's why they're so brutal during training.
Yeah, disassociation. I mean, that's what they're good for, right? That's not a person you're killing, right? It's something else.
Well, it's the enemy, isn't it?
And the enemy is less than human.
Well, and it kill or be killed.
And you heard the stories of people wearing fingers around their neck, around their, and some people have huge horror stories from Vietnam of what some of the guys did there. And, Coppola, he condenses it into the novel and the trip down the river. But in the meantime, these people are maybe law-abiding citizens, but when they get over there, they're raping, they're torturing.
There was pushback on those that returned from Vietnam. I know there was pushback by the general public in America. They didn't want anything to do with them, and in fact, a lot of them lived on the streets after they came back. Now, as an outsider looking in, being from Britain, that's no way to treat people that have put their life on the line for their country,
Yeah, I read the statistics of homeless people in the U.S., 33 to 50% are veterans who served in the war and who are homeless. And Lynn, Massachusetts, where I lived in the next town, they actually housed every veteran in their town. The first town to do it across all of the United States.
Brilliant.
Yep, got them off the streets, gave them housing, gave them health care, gave them this, gave them that. But I hear just the horror stories. When they say it's military grade, most military people say, yeah, it's the cheapest option. It's not the best, but it's the cheapest option. So, and we heard that in Afghanistan. They weren't given really good materials, and a lot of people were talking out about it and stuff. But war's crazy to begin with. It's a state of chaos, and then it's not like the old days where British march, we march, and generals were in the front. No, this is all out guerrilla warfare and drive you crazy, right? We did that all the time. And in the movie where Charlie doesn't surf, Robert Duvall, when he's about to bomb them, he's playing the flight of the Valkyrie, da 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 da.
Yep.
So he's scaring the hell out of them and bombing them at the same time and enjoying it, and then he's still looking for a place to surf, which is just absurd, right? It's crazy. And the whole movie, if you stick with it, it gets crazier and crazier. And
I'm definitely gonna watch it because I got the app and I can get pretty much any movie on there. So definitely we'll watch that. Right, we've spent quite a bit of time on that.
yeah.
We originally started out saying, "Oh, we'll do 10 minutes on each movie," but I'm all for keeping the flow going. So if we do 10 minutes, fine. If we go over, even better. Right. So coming after Jeff's number 5, Apocalypse Now. My number 5 is Jaws. And the reason and Jaws, Steven Spielberg, 1975, Roy Schreider, Richard Dreyfuss,
and who's the
and
old,
Robert Shaw.
the old
Robert
sailor?
Shaw,
Yeah, he's great.
And I think Richard Dreyfuss is the only surviving one now. I think the other two have died. And Robert Shaw died not long after Jaws. I think it was the 80s. And for me, Jaws, when I first saw it, it was 75 it was made. I wasn't old enough to go and see it at the movies, even though it didn't carry an 18 certificate. And these days, you'd think, fucking hell, that's not an 18, because it's pretty gruesome in parts. From the opening scene, really, which is just a couple of hippies. Well, there's quite a few hippies on a beach, and they're all drinking and smoking pot and whatnot. And then one chick looks at this guy, and then they, come on, let's go for a swim. He's so out of it that he collapses on the beach. Meantime, Spielberg, who I think is just a brilliant director, you've got this woman in the ocean. You've got the moonlight in the distance, perfect reflection on the water, and you see her feel a tug on her leg and go under. And then she's pulled from side to side, grabs hold of a buoy, and then she goes under. Meantime, it pans back to this bloke who's just fallen asleep on the beach. That scene, although we see it when we watch it and it's nighttime and we're looking at the moon, was actually shot in the day. And they used filters over the camera to make the sun look like the moon, because he wanted that reflection on the water.
Yeah, the deep, because he was shooting up.
Yeah.
He needed light.
And of course the music as well.
Oh my God! You hear that music,
John Williams. Yeah, John Williams, and really, really simple. Burn 'em, bum bum bum, and it just builds up and builds up. And I love the quotes. There's some really, really humorous quotes in it, and I've in the past I've used these quotes in the line of work that I used to do. And one is I'm pretty famous for, on Twitter at least. I use it a lot to people that deny there's problems with antidepressants, and they're normally psychiatrists. And I say to them, I'm familiar with the fact that you are going to ignore this problem till it comes up and bites you right on the ass, which is what Dreyfuss says to the Lord Mayor, or the Mayor of Amity.
That's right.
He says that, and that's when they're looking at the picture. There's a big poster, and somebody had drawn the fin of a shark and had this woman screaming shark. And it's all about, the movie is all about greed. It's all about one man saying, no, we're not going to shut the town down because somebody's been killed. And it aligns very much with what I did, with in the antidepressant world, the advocacy work that I did.
But the funny thing is, with Apocalypse Now, it's almost the same thing. They created Colonel Kurtz, and he's the shark now, and he bites them in the ass, and now they have to get rid of the mother. But go ahead.
It's really weird as well, because there aren't that many, when you look at the scale of things, there aren't that many shark attacks. When Jaws came out, People were actually scared to go in the ocean. I remember, and it was some years later after the movie was made. I'm talking about the early 90s. The kids said to me they had like a blow up little raft, and it took me fucking ages to blow this thing up.
Were you smoking at the time?
I was, yeah, and we'd walked a distance. We're on the beach, and I blew it up, and it had a couple of oars. And I thought,
why is Bob laying on the beach?
well, I thought I'm gonna try this out now. So off I went, and I went pretty far out, so far out that I couldn't hear people on the beach anymore.
Wow.
And it was beautiful, it was peaceful, it was
Also
quiet.
scary.
And so I jumped out.
Depending on the tide,
Yeah,
it can be very scary.
I was pretty safe. It was in England. It was in the Solent in England. I knew I was safe. There's no undercurrents there. Anyway, I jumped out, and I could still kind of stand up,
Yeah.
but sort of like needed to hold onto the boat. And then in my head, I heard the music, dun, 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 and I literally fucking dived back on of the boat. And this is just a movie.
Yeah.
So the psychological effect that it had on people. One thing I must mention about Jaws, and it's probably the best single scene that I've ever seen in a movie, is where the Kintner boy, who's on the raft, and his mother, he keeps pestering his mum, can I go out? Yeah, go on out there. And he's on the raft, and then you see everybody else in the water, and you hear all the noise. And what Spielberg did with the camera and the microphone, he would purposely come up above the water where you'd hear the noise and then drop it so the noise became muffled. So it felt like you was going under the water. Now, in the meantime, Roy Schreider was sitting down on the beach, and he was just looking out at the water. And then when the Kintner boy gets done by the shark, and you see all the blood come from the raft, just one of the best scenes that I've ever seen. Yeah. The camera zooms in to Roy Schreider, but at the same time it zooms out. And what Spielberg did there, he used a dolly.
Yeah. I just read about that effect.
Oh my God, it was just unbelievable.
Where they bring the person forefront and everything else they receive.
And it was the look of shock on his face because he'd witnessed what we'd all witnessed,
Yeah, what would you do in that case? I would be in shock.
Well,
I'd be like, holy fuck.
It was brilliant because he was scared of the water. Do you know what I mean? And another great line, he's out on a boat with Richard Dreyfuss, who's from the Oceanographic Institute.
That's right. OC.
And I think they're having a conversation, and Schreider, who's drunk because he's been drinking the wine after witnessing this death, he says to Dreyfuss, it doesn't make sense why somebody like you would own a boat like this, because the boat's worth millions that he's got. And Dreyfuss turns around, again, a brilliant line, and he says, well, it doesn't make sense for anybody who hates water to live on an island. And Schreider comes back with, it's only an island if you look at it from the ocean, which is just brilliant.
Yeah.
It's just, it's simple, but
perspective.
It's brilliant. Yeah, simple,
perspective.
but brilliant. I too have watched the making of Jaws. They had two boats. And the line, we're going to need a bigger boat, which is the most famous line. On one boat, you had the crew and all the equipment because Spielberg said, I don't want to film this in a studio with water, in a big tank. I actually want to film it out there on the ocean. And that had its drawbacks because the mechanical shark, they had a number of them. The salt water got into the shark, and they stopped working. The shark stopped working. So to get over that,
there's no CGI at this point, right?
There wasn't, but to get over that, Spielberg said, "Okay," and he came up with this idea: if we can't show the shark, then we've got to let the people at home know that the shark is there, and that's why they shot the famous barrel scene. Where they shot the barrels at the shark, and then it went on and it pulled the barrels under, and then they popped up again. That was Spielberg's idea because the shark just wasn't working. The most famous line, "We're going to need a bigger boat," actually comes
great.
from the crew. So the crew was on a boat and they were having to move around all the equipment while they're filming the other boat, the Orca. And one of the crew kept saying, "We're going to need a bigger boat. We're going to need a bigger boat." And I think it was Roy Schreider who, when the shark came up, when he's feeding it the chum and he steps back, the original scene was just don't say nothing. And he says, "We're going to need a bigger boat." And they kept it in. And for me, that's just a fantastic line. Shot in Martha's Vineyard. Jaws was.
Yep. Supposed to be in New York. I forgot the name of the beach, but I remember. But it was shot.
Well, there was relics of one of the boats that was washed up. It's not
That's
there
funny.
anymore because people have come along and taken bits of souvenirs until they stripped it right down to zero. For me, that is a movie I can always sit down and watch and just not get bored of it at all. And again, some of the camera work in it, we talked about the dolly zoom and stuff like that, but just the ocean itself. And they didn't film it too far off the ocean because they couldn't. The shark, the mechanical sharks, they nicknamed Bruce after Steven Spielberg's lawyer.
I thought it was
he had a lawyer.
Bruce Campbell of Evil Dead.
No, it was after his lawyer, and he rang, "Hey, I've named the shark after you."
Do you know?
An attorney shark.
So just the other day, Disney got rid of one of the Jaws shark.
They did?
Yeah, because it was just deteriorating and falling apart. It is now on the entry sign for like a junkyard.
Didn't Alice Cooper also get one?
Yeah, probably. There was a
I think
couple,
it is.
like you said, So, yep. All right. I had a thought, and that thought
Has gone. Yeah. So for me, that is, if I was on a desert island, I would definitely take that movie with me. The music, even the acting is pretty
Yeah.
good. Dreyfus was pretty much unknown before he took that role. I just think he's superb in it.
Yeah.
So that's my number 5.
But I grew up on the St. Lawrence River of the United States. That splits Canada from the United States. It comes from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to the Great Lakes, and so you always have these huge ships coming from China, all over the world, coming through to deliver goods to the Great Lakes, right? And the St. Lawrence River is huge. And we have a fish called muskellunge, or we just call it muskie. And it's like a pike. I never caught one. I caught pike, but I never caught one. These things are huge. I mean, some of them are taller than me. They have been spotted coming up from the bottom and eating a whole duck,
Bloody hell.
swallowing a whole duck. And then in Watertown, a girl was on the pier just with her friends dangling her feet, and a muskie came up and bit off all her toes.
Bloody hell.
So, it doesn't have to be this great white shark,
doesn't.
right?
If anything brushes past you,
I'm out.
You can be ankles deep in white water because, white water you can't see underneath it, and something, even a crab, can just brush past
Oh
you.
my God.
Just one more thing about that movie. There's a scene where Robert Shaw is talking about when they delivered the bomb. So he's on the boat and it's very, very quiet. They've all had a drink, and he's on about
This
when
is
they
like the calm
before the storm.
it-
And he's talking about when they delivered the bomb to Hiroshima, and it's a really long piece of dialogue when when they first shot it, Robert Shaw, who was known, the actor, was known to drink a lot, even on set, made a right pig's ear of it. And by the way, him and Dreyfus hated each other.
Yes. Yeah.
So he made a right pig's ear of it the first time. And
okay.
Spielberg had to have a word with him and said, listen, that just wasn't good enough. We want you to reshoot the scene. And they did it again a couple of days later. And that one scene was in one take. And it's really, it's got nothing to do with the movie at all, but it tells you about his background and why he's such an ass.
Yeah.
Because to witness what he did and to witness men being picked off from the boat that they sank by sharks, it's pretty fucking disturbing.
If I was ever drafted, and if you were ever, would you actually go and kill people?
Not now, because I'm older and wiser now.
Of course, yeah.
Now my son, as you know, he was in the parachute regiment and he did a tour of Afghanistan. And one question that I've never asked him, and I never will, is
have you killed?
Did you kill anybody? Now, when he did come back, he did open up a little bit, and I thought, I'm not going to ask any questions. I'm just going to let him talk.
That's a hyper. This is one of my greatest philosophers I love. He would call that war hyper reality, right? Everything's hyper. I mean, you're on alert. You're killing people.
Yeah.
And you're carrying your dead friends' bodies or nearly dead.
Yeah.
It's hyper real.
A lot of
and then when you come home,
yeah,
nothing's happening.
I know, yeah.
You go to the pub.
Yeah, a lot of it for Dan, my son, he told me it was a lot of just sitting around doing nothing. They'd find an old shelter, where they had to defecate into bags so the enemy couldn't find them because they put dogs out and stuff. And they just sit and watch farmers.
That's the Jake Gyllenhaal movie.
Which is,
they were over, I think it was the Iran. And it just showed the boredom of these guys in the desert and how much they just wanted one sniper shot, right? Just to make it exciting.
Well, that's what will get you killed.
I just, me, myself, I mean, even if it's the worst person in the world, maybe, right? If I really believe in something and I feel I'm not getting bullshitted by the government, which is probably impossible to know to begin with, I'll go be a mechanic. I'll work in the cafeteria. I'll work anything, but I'm not going to hold a gun and shoot people and come back with what they call the eyes, the distant eyes, where you're totally shell shocked. Yeah. And I just say I ain't gonna do it.
Somebody breaks into your house in the middle of the night. Sue is there. Sue is Jeff's wife, by the way. You've got a gun, and I'm not saying you have got a gun, but in this scenario, you've got a gun. What do you do?
Okay, so I have a real story where Sue and I, dog, cat, we're sleeping. It's about 3:00 in the morning. The alarm goes off. And the first thing I say is, Sue, grab everyone, get out of the house. And I had a baseball bat. I was a baseball player, and I could do some damage with a bat. And I went through the whole house saying, "Motherfucker, come out. I'm going to beat your ass," whether you had a gun or not.
What was you going through at that point? Was you scared?
No, adrenaline.
So adrenaline?
Yeah, so there was no scared or not scared.
Angry?
It was like, this motherfucker's in my house.
So you was angry?
You could say it, but the adrenaline is just going through. And the first thing I did was I walked around the house to see if any of my doors or windows were broken into. None. And then I went through the house looking, and then Sue says, they say it's coming from the cellar, right? Don't go in the cellar. Right? So I go down and I'm like, okay, motherfucker, this is it. And I went down and nothing. And it ended up being a spider was crawling over the motion
Bloody
detector.
hell.
But
So
yeah,
you would have caused some damage had it have been
or I would
an
have been shot.
intruder.
Who knows? If he has a gun, I probably would have been shot. Right. If he has a knife, maybe I have an equal chance.
Yeah, 'cause you don't
right.
know that, yeah.
Technically, I probably should have went out with Sue and waited for the police to come.
So the state of mind that you was in at that point is probably the state of mind that soldiers are in because they've been conditioned during the training.
Yeah.
They've been conditioned to feel that,
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with fear. In fact, fear can actually protect you as well. Like, if you're scared of something and you're taught not to be, face your fears, it can actually make you more of a machine when it comes to instances like that.
Yeah. And the funny thing, as we talk about, and I look back, is the lucidity I had and the logic I had. First, get everyone out. 2, look where the break-in is. Okay. 3, go in and start doing a house search. And that was when, everything, the alarm's going and everything's crazy and neighbors are coming out. And I walked back in the house with a bat, and, but in some way, I think it was a stupid. Right? All police say don't. Yeah, don't. But it's my house, man.
Well, it's your domain, it's your castle. Police also tell you to stay in your car if you break down.
Yeah.
Which is fucking ridiculous.
You're going to get hit.
You're going to get hit, of course you can't. But the way that they see it is, if you get hit, you're in a car and you're kind of protected by the car, so they say, opposed to running across a highway and getting a hit where you're
give me an old Delta 98 or whatever, those huge tanks. Okay, now I feel safe.
It'll be like a concertina, do you know what I mean? It's really weird though, but if somebody broke in here and I had sort of like a bat next to me bed, I'd probably come out and confront them. If I knew it was a fucking spider, I'd send Chrissy out. Do you know what I mean? I do not like spiders,
But I grew up in a house of guns. I grew up in a very rural area where people hunted, fished. People had rifles on their truck, truck on the back and stuff. And my bedroom had guns all over, right? And I took, training on guns and, stuff like that. And I know how to use. So if those guns were there when that happened, I wouldn't be carrying a baseball bat. I'd be carrying a 12 gauge.
With a gun, if only for not the fact that you're going to shoot this person, but you're going to make him think twice about coming at you if you've got a gun at him,
Yeah, I don't want to shoot anyone, really, and it would be one empty chamber and to scare them. But if it turns out to be dangerous, plop in the live round and just get it over. And you're well within your rights. The guy's in your house, blah, blah, blah. So I shot that motherfucking spider dead. Him and his whole family.
Rather you than me on that one. I was sitting here one night. Chrissy was in the States. And it was early hours of the morning. I was watching boxing or waiting for the main fight to come on. And I saw one of our cats looking up at the wall. And above the TV down there, it's this huge fucking spider. And I took a picture of it and went onto Facebook on the Bokeh news group. Because there's a lot of people on there that know a lot of shit.
Yep.
And I said, what sort of spider is this? And somebody came back, it's fine, it's a wolf spider. They come inside to lay eggs. And I thought, well, I don't
Wow.
fucking want that laying eggs. So somebody said to me, just get it down with a broom. So I got a broom. I went into the laundry, came back in with a broom, and I'm up there and I'm swinging the broom back. And as I go to hit it, it fucking jumped off the wall. The cat's chasing it all around, couldn't find it. I went to bed that night. I was tempted to put masking tape across my mouth. I shut the door, and then the next day I got up, and the thing was halfway through. We didn't used to have a thing on the bottom of the front door there.
Oh.
We've now got something to stop bugs coming in. It was halfway out and halfway in, and it was dead. And sure enough, there was eggs. There was eggs there. So
Yeah, spiders are.
not for me.
Yeah, most of the spiders are good.
Yeah.
And-
I know.
And it's funny, I'll be sitting up on my porch reading in the morning or afternoon, and I'll be vaping, and it's a sweet taste.
Yeah.
I'll have bees coming to me, and they're on my hand, they're on the phone, and I know why they're there. And I just sit there and I keep reading, and they don't bother me. And we all know what bees mean to, the earth and everything else.
I think pretty much any insect, really, if you leave them alone, it's like snakes,
Yeah.
I'd be petrified if I saw a snake here, but if you leave them alone, they won't touch you, Anyway, moving on.
Man.
Number 4, Jeff.
All right. So this is one of my. She was surprised. My wife was surprised about this one because I pushed off one of the ones she guessed, and I was watching it. So one night, Sue was in bed. I was staying up late, probably 2:00. I was working a lot of hours, and so you just end up having a really freaky schedule. And this movie came up, and I'm watching it, and there's a certain style to it, the music, the colors, the neon colors. It was all 80s. It was to mimic the 80s, and the guy did it perfectly. The director is Nicholas Refn, and he has a couple movies that I absolutely love. Another one, Only God Can Forgive. And so I'm sitting here watching this movie, and I'm like, hey, this is a pretty well, movie, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, a violent scene breaks out that you couldn't believe would happen. And you're so shocked by it that you are sitting up going, holy, I never saw this coming. I never knew. And then it just is hyper violence after that. So the movie is called Drive, and it got 7.8. It is directed by Nicholas Refn, and Ryan Gosling is the driver.
What?
Ryan Gosling?
Yeah, I know Ryan Gosling.
I love him.
Is he smoking?
Except for Barbie and all that crap.
Oh
But
my
if
God.
if you watch his early stuff when he was a kid, oh my God. Yeah. There's one movie called Luke and the Real Girl or something like that. And it's hilarious. I've watched all his movies early on. I did not watch Ken and Barbie. So he is a driver, and it's set in the 80s. The music is the 80s. The camera shots are the 80s. The colors of neon, blah, blah, blah. It's the 80s. And he captures it perfectly. And Ryan is a man with no name right off the bat. And the director said he wanted to create a fairy tale like Grimm's, which if anyone reads Grimm's fairy tales, they don't come out good, right? So he wanted a fairy tale with LA as the background and with an 80s feel. And so this guy He doesn't say much. Like I said, I mean, once this one scene hit me, it was like I am sitting up. I'm not going to sleep. I'm watching this whole movie. When something just blows your mind, you just stop, right? So he works as a mechanic. He's a Hollywood stunt driver, so he knows how to drive. And he also drives for criminals if they're robbing any place or doing anything. And he sets it all. You got 5 minutes. I don't carry a gun. I don't go in. You got 5 minutes. If you're not back, I'm gone. If you're back, I can guarantee your safety. And the first chase scene is out of this world. Fantastic. And that's not even it, right? So he is a fantastic, and he's calm. He's a man of few words, calm. It just doesn't do much. And but the thing is, he always has this coat on with a scorpion on its back, right? And that, of course, has meaning. Because if you remember, there's the old scorpion and the frog, right? The scorpion said both the frog and the scorpion need to go across. For some reason, the frog needs the scorpion needs the frog. They go over, the scorpion kills the frog, they drown. And, the frog asks, why'd you do it? And he's like, well, that's my nature, right? So, and scorpions are ultra fast too. When violence breaks out, it just happens. Some of the themes is essence, what a person is, right? Mythology is a big one, and he does a lot of homage. Like there's an elevator scene that reminded me of Stephen King. There's a time when he goes to meet the mob and he puts on like a Michael Myers mask. Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, he's standing in this. The mob's inside this diner. It's a clear door, and he's standing there like with the mechanic suit with the mask, and he's just emotionless because of the mask, and no one even recognizes or knows he's there. And but the thing is, so before any violence hit, he meets this girl. He moves. His next door neighbor is this girl with a kid. He spends time with her. They end up liking each other a lot. But she has a boyfriend in prison who's about to get out. Right.
Can see where this is going.
Right. So he's a man of few words, doesn't have any connections, but he's falling for this girl, right? Which is the downfall of many men. So the guy gets out, and the mob says, well, you owe us money. You got to pull a job for us, right? And it goes wrong. And the mob is going to go up, kill the guy, kill the woman, and kill her kid, right? Just wipe out everyone. And so they all go in the elevator. So Ryan, the woman he likes, and the kid he likes are in the elevator, and the guy comes in. And, he's savvy because he was helping the boyfriend trying to get out when it all went wrong. So, he's pretty savvy. He looked over and saw a big pistol in the guy, right? And up to this point, this guy doesn't allude to anything, right? He's a calm man of no words.
Yeah.
So once he sees this guy, he takes the woman and her kid, pushes them to the farthest corner, kisses her, and then the scorpion hits. He it is so hyper violent that you could never see it coming from him. And even when he's done killing this guy, he turns around and the horror on the woman's face looking at him, you're capable. I mean, you're really a psychopath, right? And the funny thing is, and he captures perfectly Ryan Gosling's face where he's actually hurt that she had to see this and to see his true nature. And they really don't hang out or see each other ever in the movie again. She's out, right? And he is capable of ultra violence, right? And that's what shocked me. I mean, I'm just sitting there watching, okay, so it's an armed robbery, mob thing, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, he destroys this guy beyond destroying. And it freaks everyone out in the scene. And it freaked me out watching it at home. And that's when I sat up, right? And so he saves the woman and the kid, and she's done with him because she actually sees his true nature. Again, going back to the scorpion, the frog. The frog, why did you sting me? Well, it's my nature. The woman could have said the same thing to him. Why did you kill him like a psychopath? Well, that's my nature. I am a psychopath, and through the rest of the movie, I mean, he's capable of this ultra violence. He's not scared.
Did it delve into his history at all, the movie?
No.
Oh, he didn't.
He comes from nowhere, and when he leaves, he goes to nowhere. Okay. He's very much like a Clint Eastwood in the old spaghetti westerns, right? And so then you find out, okay, he is like that scorpion. His true nature is violence. And when he lets it loose, you really don't want to be around. And you don't even expect it from his character or him. But when it happens, you're like, I was shocked. I was literally shocked. Holy
Well,
shit.
especially like Ryan Gosling as well, Pretty Boy and all the rest of it, And he has actually, you mentioned that he was a stunt driver previously. I just recently watched a film of his. You remember The Fall Guy with Lee Majors?
Yeah.
There's a movie about that now, and Ryan Gosling plays the Fall Guy.
And that's not with Crowe, is it?
I'm sorry? Not Russell Crowe.
Yeah, no, they have
it's
the
Ryan.
Good Guys. Yeah.
Oh, no, that is another good movie as well, yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is Ryan Gosling and some British actress who, she's pretty good. She was in that movie where you've got to be quiet. Otherwise, these creatures come and get you. Can't think of a name off the top of my
kind
head.
of like the Sandra Bullock, or
Yeah, similar to the Sandra
Quiet
Bullock one.
Place.
Yeah, Quiet Place. So she was in 1 and 2.
Yes, I'm Emily Blunt.
Emily Blunt.
Yeah.
So she's in The Fall Guy with Ryan Gosling. Yeah, so go on, carry on.
I mean, this was a strange one to put on because I switched out one of my other movies for this.
Tell us about that other movie when we get to number 1. Just before we get to number 1, don't give it away.
The reason is the cinematography blew my mind. It felt like the 80s. The shock value when he did the original hyperviolence, which he continues throughout. And like I said, he goes to face the mob and he's wearing Michael Myers mask and standing in the door just looking at everyone and then ends up killing everyone. I mean, he is a psychopath killer and who's probably killed before. And but when he found true love and then she saw his true nature and rejected him, you could see the hurt on his face like you shouldn't have saw that,
Yeah.
you know. But can you imagine living with a guy never knowing that he's capable of something like that?
It goes on
But it
every
is,
single day.
like I said, when I first watched it, it was up in the close to 9.0 on IMDb.
Jesus.
Yes, and now it's come down to 7.8.
So what year was it? Have you got the year there?
Uh, yes. I didn't write it down for this one,
Okay.
which is strange.
We'll put it up.
Yeah.
We'll put it up on online here.
You know, so it has action, it has driving,
Yep.
it has shock value, but there's also an artistic element to it that's hard to explain. So the director Refn's next movie is Only God Can Forgive. And that ends up being one of the most effed up movies I've ever seen. Ryan Gosling's in it.
Again.
Yeah.
Right.
So at the start of the movie, everything's coming up like a Thai movie. Everything's written in Thai. You're reading, you're listening to Thai music, and it just seems like, okay, I'm watching a Thai movie, right? And Ryan Gosling and his brother are Muay Thai experts, right? And I like it a lot. It's a real effed up movie. And
That didn't make your list.
I had it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But what? We can't really talk about it now because I don't want you to give it away. But did you move it out because it's got the same director? Because if you did, I've got my first three are the same director.
You know, it's now I thought Drive really made this guy's mark, or was part of him. And then the next thing you know, he does this independent Thai film in Thailand with Thai letterings and Thai music, and you feel you're watching some Asian movie. And again, he's quiet, dangerous, but there's a cop that's more dangerous than anyone else. And the mother son relationships are really effed up. The whole thing's effed up. Just completely. So I love this guy. My one favorite actor is Jim Jarmusch. And this guy's right up there. He's produced some stuff that off the wall that I just love. So,
Interesting.
And this is the only one that included like a mainstream. Well, Apocalypse Now is mainstream.
Yeah.
Almost all of them were mainstream, but this one was the one where I'm like, it's so entertaining.
How many times have you seen this movie? Drive.
Probably 4 or 5.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to show it to Sue and my cousins and stuff like that.
Well, that is another one that
Yeah.
I'll be watching. Drive with Ryan Gosling. Right, moving on to my number 4. As I mentioned, I've got the same director for my first 3 choices. This is another Spielberg movie, and this is one that is very close to my heart. And I mentioned it in the last podcast we did. I begged my parents, you've got to take me to see this. I was, I think, 13 at the time. And it's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And when I first saw the movie as a 13-year-old with my parents, and I think my 2 sisters came along, I didn't understand it. It was just too much for me to take on. But then as the years went by, or the weeks after that, actually, I went to see it on my own and started to understand a little bit more about it. I just didn't get the whole military government thing.
Yeah.
And of course, as you get older, and you do deep dives into that, I think Spielberg absolutely nailed it. And you can see it going on now in 2024. Richard Dreyfuss, again, Steven Spielberg, music, again, John Williams. Now, the main character, Dreyfuss, in this witnesses a UFO, or, well, it's not a UFO because he can actually see what the fuck it is. It's a disc above his car.
It's an IFO,
Identified flying objects. And I just think that scene where the letterboxes on the mailboxes on the side of the road start moving, and that's just before everything in the car goes fucking apeshit
wonky.
and starts flicking off. And that scene, how they shot that scene, they basically had a fixed camera, and they said to Dreyfuss, right, we're going to put you on a jig, and we're going to turn the car full circle. And the camera sort of like followed him around. So in the movie, you see he's kind of lifting up, and everything is just flying up. That's because they just turned the car around. So I think,
fantastic.
Again, Spielberg, just a fucking genius, and genius with kids as well. The kid in the movie, Cary Guthrie, his name was. He played Barry Geiler, and he's the one that comes down the stairs, and he just stands at the door. And they called him One Take Cary because he would do everything in one take, small little kid. I think he was 6 or 7.
Funny.
And there's, in that particular scene where he stands at the kitchen and he looks towards the fridge and you see all the food on the floor, and then he hears a noise and he turns to his right and this little smile comes to his face. As the viewer, you don't know what you're seeing, but he does. Spielberg later explained he got one of the crew to dress up as a gorilla and dropped a paper cup on the floor. The kid looked over and this crew member came up with a gorilla suit, and that's how you get the smile on his face.
Isn't that strange how they have to treat younger actors, especially in scary movies and stuff? They have no clue.
This is the genius of Spielberg. He's a kid.
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg is a kid. There's another scene where he gets abducted, Barry, and they live in, it looks like a farm in the middle of nowhere in Muncie, Indiana. And you see the clouds moving. And that scene, because it was 1977, there was no CGI or anything like that. I told Chrissy this the other week. How they got that scene of the night sky turning into clouds forming and just rolling in and lights in between it was a jar of water and a dab of different coloured paints, and they dropped it in and it would be filmed, and that's how they got that effect. He's looking out the window, the kid, and he's being filmed at an angle, and you can see the kid. He's down there, and he's looking up, and he's going, toys, toys. Again, this was Spielberg without telling him. He had a ladder outside this window and was filming him, and he would pull out toys. And the kid's reaction was, toys, toys. Just brilliant. And then, of course, the whole house erupts and he gets through the cat flap and then he's pulled away, which was actually his real mother on the other side of the door that was pulling him. And he's taken away. Now, Francois Truffaut, who, if I was to have a conversation about movies with some sort of like film noir expert, Truffaut would definitely, he was a director, he would definitely be up there, And Spielberg got him, and he couldn't really talk great English. He had to learn his lines in English. It was based on a guy who's very, very popular in the UFO world today, and his name is Jacques Vallée. And Jacques Vallée and Spielberg must have got together at some point to construct the movie. Well, this is what we've heard in the UFO world. People see this, they get radiation burns down the side of the face and stuff like that. And there's a line in the movie where Francois Truffaut, who plays Claude Lacombe, he turns around and he says, "They belong here more than we." But he says it in his French accent, and it's "They belong here more than we."
Why?
And because he was French and he couldn't actually speak, the proper English. So the road crew, to take the piss, they had T-shirts printed out, and it was "They belong here, Mozambique." Just brilliant. Now, Dreyfus, by the way, had previously worked with Spielberg in Jaws, and he got to hear that Spielberg was writing a movie about UFOs, and he was begging him, let me play the part. And Spielberg says, no, I don't want you. He met Steve McQueen in a bar, Spielberg, and said, here's a script. I want you to play Roy Neary, the main character. And he turned him down. He said, I can't cry on camera.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I'll take the crying out. He says, no, leave it in. It makes the movie. Gene Hackman was another one. He approached, turned him down. Al Pacino. Can you imagine Al Pacino in Close Encounters? And in the end, he said to Dreyfus, you know what? You got the gig. And I just think the end of the movie, which was spoiled by the special edition, in the original, you didn't see inside the mothership. He wanted more money, I think, to shoot another movie, Spielberg, and the studio said, well, you've got to make Close Encounters different, at least the ending. And he agreed so he could get money. I think it was Raiders or something like that.
Yep.
And
it wouldn't be the first time. I've read of many places where they didn't have the budget, so they ended up being creative.
Yeah. One interesting thing about that, they shot the whole at the back of Devil's Tower, the big runway thing. They shot that in a hangar in Alabama. And it got so hot inside this hangar with all the rigs and the lights and everything that it started to rain.
Yeah.
It got so fucking hot that it started to rain in there.
I read NASA has a building where they build their parts to space shuttles.
Yep.
It is the single largest one-story building in the world.
Yeah.
And it
has to be,
and it has its own internal atmosphere. It rains and everything, amazing.
You can believe it. I mean, part of that hangar as well blew away. There was a storm in Alabama, and there they are filming, and they had like a mock background drop, and that actually blew away during the storm, and they had to cancel filming and then sort of like refilm it at some other point. And of course, it was shot on location in Wyoming, where Devil's Tower is. You mentioned earlier about, I think it was the crew and the actors of Apocalypse Now. They came down with dysentery.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing happened in this movie. There was a scene they had to go to India, and it was where there's a load of Indians chanting "Ay, ay, ay, ay," the 5 tones.
Oh.
And a lot of the crew came down.
Interesting.
Yeah, a lot of the crew came down with dysentery on that. But yeah, so I would say when I was a kid growing up, I would see photographs in magazines of stills from the movie, and felt that I was missing out by not going to see it again. And when I started my first job, we spoke about it before, the government training scheme, £23. I was telling kids, my age, you've not seen it, you got to. And we went to see it. We went to the Gaumont to watch it. This is like 5 years later.
Yeah, this is theaters.
And, they were gobsmacked at this movie. And I watched a lot of reaction videos, people reacting to Close Encounters. And I kind of envy them. I know the first line and the last line of that movie. The first line is, are we the first? Are we the first to arrive here? That's in the desert in Mexico where they find the planes from Flight 19. And the last line is Francois Truffaut says to
Z-
Richard Dreyfuss, Monsieur Neary, I envy you. And then he walks away and he's in the spaceship. So he kind of envies him for being able to go up with these alien creatures. And again, when you watch it now, it might look a little bit dated like the aliens, but the way Spielberg shot it, he shot it with a lot of light from the background, so you didn't really see the alien. You saw kind of like a silhouette, and then they kind of do that thing at the end, the hand signals, which to this day I don't know what it
but
means.
but the conceptual part of it, getting on a spaceship with aliens, right?
Yeah.
So you can have a bad movie, but the concept's good. And my sister-in-law sold VCR movies way back, and she got full versions of the movies for reviews so they could sell the tapes, and
Yeah.
she'd always send them to me. And I saw a lot of bad movies, bad scripts, but the funny thing is almost every movie had one shot. Even if it was the worst movie, they had one shot. They did something perfect. And when I would watch a horrible movie that she sent us, and I'm like Toll Booth, you'll never hear of it. I don't think you'll ever find it. But there was just one scene that knocked me away. They nailed that one scene out of the park. The rest is crap. Don't bother. Blah blah blah. But on the flip side, think about it. Would you get on a spaceship?
I've been asked that question many years ago. I would have said, yeah, no problem. Not so much now, because I've always wanted to know. I've always wanted to know what the fuck are they, And so I'd be intrigued. But now I'm older and wiser, and I want to see my grandkids grow up. I would probably say no.
Yeah.
And but back then, when I watched it, I was envious too of Roy Neary, played by Dreyfuss. Yeah, fuck me,
Yeah.
I'd want to go up there, to see what it was all about. Interestingly, in that movie, before Dreyfuss goes on board, when it lands and the big door opens and the big beaming light comes out, you see all these people coming down, and they're all, including the little boy, they're all people that have been abducted over the years by these aliens. And at the very beginning of the movie, in the desert with the aeroplanes, the pilots come down, and the pilots are there, and they haven't aged. So they've been away since 1947. The Flight 19 went missing. I think it was Chicken Shills, it's called, went missing off Chicken Shills, and the planes have never been found, which is true. And when the pilots come down at the end of the movie, they're being sort of like ticked off, and one of the guys says they haven't even aged, and somebody says Einstein was right. And then the person replies, Einstein was probably one of them. So there's little kind of Easter eggs in the movie, And for me, it will always be in my top 5. I feel kind of disloyal by not putting it at number 1, because for many years it was my number 1 movie, and it's a bit like AC/DC. I grew up loving AC/DC, wouldn't listen to anything else. But as I got older, I did. And it's the same with this, my number 1 movie. But then I've seen other movies since that I feel just touch me more. But this movie definitely does touch me. And I just think it's beautiful at the end that this guy who's driven crazy by, this image in his head of Devil's Tower, and he wants to find an answer to it, he gets the answer.
Yeah.
He gets to get the answer, you know.
And that's where the themes come important, right? I mean, for me, you know, madness from Apocalypse Now and looking into yourself to see the darkness, and then you know uh, Drive, a guy who great directing and what the f shock value that comes out of nowhere like a scorpion. And but I don't want to seem too pretentious. I only watch things that have philosophical meaning,
It's
spiritual.
whatever. It's really whatever moves you, you know. And
Yeah.
like on the back of Close Encounters, I became more and more interested in the UFO subject. Prior to that, I was interested, and we touched on it in the last podcast, Betty and Barney Hill, you know, and stuff like that. And then the movie came out, and
Talk about the drones that are going on right now.
unbelievable.
I mean, that kind of fits the bill with the movie you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, there's drones in the United Kingdom, over 3 US Air Force bases. And we don't know if they're drones, but that's the way that they're being reported. They certainly look like drones with the footage that I've seen. And they're also in New Jersey being reported over Air Force bases. And in December, they was over Langley for about 10 nights. They've been in Britain now. It's almost 2 weeks now. They've been flying over. Nobody knows where they're taking off from, and nobody knows where they're going back to when they decide to leave. They can't track them. They just cannot track them.
Weird.
So what are they?
Yeah.
You know, and you can. The military have got a device where they can jam the radio signal or the infrared signal on these drones, and they're not doing it, or they may be doing it, but they just can't shut them down.
It's like when you catch a criminal, you want the bigger guy.
I
They probably
think-
want them to fly, and if they can get a hold of one, they could probably figure out,
Yeah,
who's
there's
doing it.
an Australian journalist who's really, into the whole UFO thing, and I watched a podcast with him last night, and he said, and again, it's I have it on good authority that these are Chinese. He said, but I don't necessarily believe what I'm being fed, but this is the word that I'm getting, that they're Chinese. And the reason why we don't want to shoot them down is because things at the moment are really, really tense.
Mm-hmm.
In the world that we live in, especially with Russia, and Ukraine, what's going on there.
And we got Gaza
this-
Strip.
Oh my God! This is what he's being told. You've got to. I really hope Trump can get in there and just stop this fucking nonsense.
But I
this,
hope he doesn't decide to side with Russia.
I just think that there is no side to this. You've just got to get the two, and you've got to bang their heads together, and you've got to say, stop this fucking nonsense now. Just stop it, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. Moving on. Your number
All
3.
right. So, a lot of my movies were independent. I love independent movies. Usually, it's from an artistic value. Some of them suck, but they have a basic idea that you can buy into. And, when I picked Apocalypse Now, it's dark, gloomy, madness, but that's part of the human nature I'm interested in. I always thought I might be a psychologist studying serial killers and people like that, that was one of my interests. Drive was just goddamn an interesting movie. that had me sit up in the middle of the night and go, wow. So, I mean,
So unexpected,
yeah.
you know.
But
you didn't
here,
expect.
yeah. So this is Dead Man, and it was made in 1995. It has 7.5 stars. It has my favorite director, Jim Jarmusch. I can name all his movies I have watched over and over again and love. Neil Young does the soundtrack, and he does it to the scene. So he's watching the movie, and he has a pump organ, like the old pump, you know, and he's playing it to the scenes, right? So he captures it perfectly. Johnny Depp is the main character, but Billy Bob Thornton's in it, Iggy Pop's in it, Crispin Glover's in it, John Hurt's in it, Gabriel Byrne's in it, Robert Mitchum's in it, Gibby Haynes from the Butthole Surfers is getting a blowjob in the alley in it. You know, I just love it, right? And they call it an acid Western or a postmodern Western. In an acid Western, it has the effects of the 1960s a little bit into it, wacky. And postmodern, it gets away, it just gets away from the usual tropes and introduces, something new. And so it's shot in monochrome. So it's black and white, but it's also monochrome. Mm-hmm. So Johnny Depp, okay, so the themes here: death, quest for spiritual transcendence. There's innocent good men and wicked good men. The evil of the industrial age. And I'll get to this last theme point in a minute. So Johnny Depp is this meekly guy on a train, and his girlfriend broke up with him. I think his parents might have died. So he's going from Cleveland to a place called Machine, Arizona. Machine. I mean, what does that tell you, right? You talk about the industrial age and stuff. Machine. It doesn't sound good, right? I mean,
and this is a real place.
No.
Oh, it's not. No. Okay.
Right. And so he's promised a job, and he's on his way. So he's on a train, and his name is William Blake. And William Blake is a 19th century poet. He lived from the 1700s to the 1800s. And so they share the same name, which is not coincidental. Because death, quest of spiritual transcendence, the evil of the industrial age, all these things the real William Blake poet wrote about. Right. So they line up perfectly. Right. And the Doors named themselves after one of his poems. If my eyes could be cleansed, the doors of perception would be wide open. Right? That the Doors named it after a William Blake poem.
So was he British, William Blake?
I think so.
It's like an English-sounding name, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I'd have to look that
Willie
up.
Blake.
But he is, later in the 1800s, there was transcendentalism, where they're trying to, reach a higher level. William Blake was, he was probably the beginning of that. I love his poems and stuff, and he does blow your mind a little bit. So it's funny. So Johnny Depp leaves Cleveland for Machine, Arizona, the Wild West. No law out there, no nothing, right? So he's going from civilization to raw.
Why is he going there?
So his parents died, his girlfriend left him, he was promised a job, and he thought it would be a good idea. So he's on a train, and he has this one. He has a nice hat, beautiful hair. He himself is pretty. He has a nice suit, and he's all proper. He falls asleep. And then when he wakes up, he looks around. The people have changed, a little rougher.
Okay.
And then train goes. He falls asleep, wakes up, looks around. The people are rougher.
Wait a minute, is this like a paranormal movie or something?
No, it's a death movie.
So, presumably, when he falls asleep, people get off and new people come on, and he's getting to a place which is more and more fucked up.
Yes, so he's going from Cleveland to Arizona on one single train, and every time he falls asleep and wakes up, he's in Denver or Colorado or something, and then one of the final ones is it's so alienated to him that he's kind of freaked out, and this guy, the train conductor, is Crispin Glover, comes out and says William Blake's poem to him. And he looks over and goes, "Look, buffalo." And all the guys get up, open the windows, are just shooting buffalo just for the fuck of it. Right? And Johnny Depp was like, "Oh my God, this is not Cleveland," right? So, so he definitely stands out from everyone around him in this highly Western place. And he gets to Machine, and it's a scary town. There's bones of animals everywhere. Guy's getting, Gibby Haynes of Butthole Surfers is getting a blowjob in the alley. He looks over and Gibby points a revolver at him. He's walking, and you can hear the machine, just the actual machine of the mining company, or you could hear it, right? It's just, and again, going back to William Blake, it's the industrialization period that he was fighting against, right? And so he gets the machine, the company goes up. Robert Mitchum is the boss, right?
Now, wasn't he in the original 3:10 to Yuma?
Oh God, yes. Yeah. Robert Mitchum is,
I love the remake of that, by the way.
Oh God, I love it. Yeah, I absolutely love it.
That was Russell Crowe.
Yeah. So he goes in. They say, "You don't have a job," and he says, "Well, it says in the letter I do," and they said they filled it.
Cool.
All right. So he's traveled all the way from Cleveland to Machine, Arizona, doesn't have a job, doesn't know what to do, no money. And he gets drunk in a bar, meets a girl. They sleep together. And while in bed, her boyfriend comes in. I think she's a prostitute, but he loves her. So the guy was going to shoot Johnny Depp, the main character, and the girl puts her body in front of him, and the guy shoots the girl, but the bullet goes through her and goes into Johnny Depp, right? But as a prostitute, she has a pistol under the pillow, which he knew about, and he picks it up and just, he doesn't know what he's doing, but he ends up hitting the guy and killing him. So now he's been shot, injured, maybe dying, and he's on the run because the guy that he shot was Robert Mitchum's son, the head of Machine. So he hires these three guys to chase after Johnny Depp. One guy won't stop talking. The other guy is like a young Billy the Kid. The third guy ate his family and is a cannibal. Has no qualms about eating and shooting anything. Right. So He's shot, and he leaves. He has to leave town, and he ends up meeting this Indian called Nobody, right?
That's his actual name. Nobody.
That's right,
Okay.
right. As a matter of fact, there's one scene where Johnny Depp goes into a camp to greet these guys that he has no clue about, and they're like, "Who are you with?" And he's like, "Nobody." You know? So the Indian, when he finds out, so Johnny Depp's character's name is William Blake, just like the poet. The Indian, when he asks his name, William Blake, the poet? And, Johnny Depp has no clue what he's talking about because he's never heard William Blake. But the Indian did, which is strange, right? He starts quoting poems from William Blake, right? And he thinks Johnny Depp is a reincarnation of William Blake. But the Indian obviously has more knowledge about things than Johnny Depp, who's from Cleveland and is well educated.
Yeah.
So,
So when you say Indian, you mean like indigenous?
Native American
Right,
to
right.
America. Yeah.
Okay.
So you find out the Indian was captured, put in a cage, and brought to all the U.S. cities for people to stare at, like Barnum Bailey shows or traveling shows.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is he still doesn't understand American culture. He goes, "I've gone to Toronto, New York, Boston, and the one thing I could never figure out is how they move all those people from city to city."
Where?
Right? So, but also he got educated. So he went to Europe and he got educated, and that's where he found William Blake, right? And when he escaped and went back to his tribe refused him because he was captured by the Europeans or the Americans.
He was tainted.
He was tainted. So he is nobody on his own. And so Nobody sees he's injured, tries to remove the bullet, but it's too close to his heart, and he cannot remove the bullet. And Johnny Depp is a walking dead man, basically, at that point, right? Bleeding out slowly, and he is now between life and death. He is past life, but he's not dead yet, right? And the in between, there's many cultures, Buddhism, and who else? Japanese, I think they called it Mu. They said the in between is the most important part. Through change and transcendence, it's you go through something, and after that door closes, you have some space of time before a new door opens. And the gold is the in between. And that even comes into computer science. A guy said it's not the objects, it's in between the objects, because then you can do anything, right? So Nobody ends up being his spirit guide to the spirit world, right? He just rides with him. And it's funny, in the journey,
Nobody the Indian, not Nobody, is there for him, but Nobody the Indian is there.
is there for him, right? So they're riding together. And he actually, and Johnny Depp actually kills more guys. He went into a tent, and Gabriel Burns is the store tender, doesn't want the Indian in, then recognizes Johnny Depp, and he's about to do something, and Johnny Depp puts a knife right over his hand and then shoots him in the head, right? So Johnny Depp is now, and then the last two killings he does, he's like, poo, poo, and he's like bored.
So when was this, mate? Was this before Johnny Depp became really famous?
1995.
Okay,
And
so
I
he was
saw it
well
in the
known.
theaters. Yeah.
Wow.
And this is Jim Jarmusch. Yeah, so they get to their destination, and which is Pacific Northwest Indians. And the cinematography is fantastic because they come up and it's a big bird, like the Seahawks bird, right, on the NFL football. And it just opens up. And Johnny Depp is now kind of in a fever dream, and Neil Young is playing his music and nobody's carrying him, and he just sees visions of people and looking at him, blah blah blah. And they're all helping him to the spirit world. I mean, the whole movie, Dead Man, is about a guy between life and death, and that's it. And
This is another movie that I've not seen. Now, you would have thought that I would have saw Apocalypse Now, but it's just one of them movies that I've avoided. You know, I've never ever seen any of the Godfathers.
oh, Sue's
Not
family
one.
would kill you over that.
Well, not
Every
one.
Christmas we have to watch Godfather 1, 2, 3.
So not
It's
one,
like
and
10 hours.
I'm not opposed to gangster. I love Goodfellas. In fact, it was
Yeah.
there or thereabouts for me. Goodfellas.
True.
I love that movie. Casino. I love but mainly I love Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci is probably the best gangster that's ever graced the scene.
Yeah.
Just because he's a complete fucking psycho. But yeah,
Who
so
was it? I think it was James Caan during the filming of Godfather would hang out with a mob, including the head mob boss of one
So
family.
is that like method acting? Because he
I
wanted
guess so.
To, yeah.
Yeah. But he was always at the Playboy Mansion.
Right.
He could be trusted.
He was brilliant in Misery, I have to say. Brilliant.
So, so he goes through trials and tribulations. They finally get to this certain tribe. They carve out a canoe for him, fill it with cedar boughs and stuff like that, and they push him out to the ocean, and that's the last we see of the dead man. And the cannibal guy is still on the tracks. He kills nobody. Nobody kills him. But I still have, nobody may not even be real. It just could be a spirit guide. Mm-hmm. The characters around the movie is the road. It's like a road movie, but it is the traversal between life and death. And I love that. And there was a term for Indians in the 1800s, 1700s. They called them noble savages, right? Which is insulting. In the movie, it's completely flipped. The white men are savages, and the Indians are the good guys.
Well, there's probably an element of truth in that.
Exactly, right? I watched one show about the making of trains going from East Coast to West Coast. And to get through one of the passes, they had to meet with the Cherokee Indians. And this guy with a fucking nice coat and handlebar mustache and sits down with the chief of Cherokee and goes, "We can offer you a better life." And the chief is insulted. He goes, "A better life than what? Mm-hmm. We've been doing fine. There is nothing you can offer that will change our mind." And then they just end up killing them anyways, right? So that's the American way, right? We can offer you a better life. You don't agree with us? Well, we're going to kill you.
Untouched by technology.
Yeah.
I know which life I'd choose, I think technology has ruined us. I really do. Again, Dead Man. It's called Dead Man.
Dead Man.
I have
And
not heard of that movie.
I saw it in a theater, and it blew me away. Only because it's a transcendent movie about the intermittent life and death and the travel to get there. And it had a big influence on me. I love Jim Jarmusch. That was the first movie I watched of his. I could name all his movies that were just.
How many times have you watched Dead Man?
Oh God! I had the tape. I had the CD. Now I have the digital. I just love it. But you look at the themes. You got look into yourself, and you'll find the darkness. You look at Drive, his true nature. This is the intermittent between life and death and the spiritual, experience going from one to another. So, I started looking at my movies that I picked, and all of them have some sort of existential experience or human experience that we all like. Have you ever been so angry you ever surprised yourself? And I have no problem saying this. I was talking to a psychiatrist. He goes, Jesus, you're angry. And no matter how much he said it, I did not. Jeff, angry? What are you talking about? But he saw through me, and later on, I'm like, yeah, I have a lot of anger about a lot of things, right?
It's pretty weird. We're running out. Let me jump into my number three.
So that's Dead Man.
Dead Man is Jeff's number three. My number three, again, I'm going with Spielberg, and this is the last Spielberg. Trust me on this. This, for me, is the greatest love story ever told. I love the movie. I love watching it with kids, and I watched it with my niece, Honey, back in England so many times that every time I go back, she says, Bob, can we watch?
Oh.
That movie is E.T., the extraterrestrial. Spielberg recently...
E.T., the extra testicle.
The extra testicle. Spielberg doesn't often watch movies that he's made, but he recently revisited E.T. and he says, and he was blowing his own trumpet, it's the perfect movie. It is the perfect movie from start to finish.
But didn't Jaws break the record of the most earning, and then E.T.
A blockbuster, like financially, probably.
And then E.T. followed up and broke those records.
I mean, E.T. I first saw because we heard that this movie's coming out called E.T. It's a real tearjerker. And it didn't hit Britain. It was already out in America, and it didn't hit Britain for a couple of weeks, the release. And I worked for the Royal Mail back then. And, of course, there was pirate copies flying around. And this one guy...
You ever go postal?
Sorry?
You ever go postal?
Postal?
You don't know this?
No.
Yeah. In America, there's a thing that says go postal. Means shooting everyone up at your work.
All right, now. Yeah. So anyway,
I guess it's the mundane existence, and they just can't take it anymore, or something.
No, not heard that saying before. So anyway, got the pirate copy, took it home, sat down with my mum and dad, watched it. Oh no, tell a lie, sat down with my two friends, Huggies and Mick Lovesey, and
Mick Lovin.
Mick Lovesey is his name. I actually give him a part in the book, Mick Lovesey.
No shit.
Book that I wrote, yeah. Anyway, so we're sort of like, I think it was, what year was it made? 1982.
Yeah.
And we're watching it, me, Mick, and Huggies and his mother, and we're trying to hold back the tears, because the ending is fucking so sad. And for me, when I've sort of like sat back and analysed it, it is really a story about friendship and such a strong friendship and protection, wanting to protect the thing that you love the most, which is Elliot. And
it doesn't really matter what the fuck it is.
it doesn't matter.
right?
It's a little bit, every time I see E.T., I think of every pet that I've owned. And
My
that
friend-
they need us,
Yeah.
that more than we need them. We have them because, we want a soft little cuddly dog or cat, but they need us to survive, without us, they wouldn't survive. And I just think that E.T., that movie is just a brilliant, brilliant love story. And based on Spielberg's upbringing, the fact that Dee Wallace, who plays the mother of the kids, is going through a divorce, that the father left them. That's what happened in Spielberg's life, And so he wanted to make a movie which was about kind of being alone and confused, and then something comes along and you just form this bond, this friendship. And for me, and like I say, when I watched it with Honey, at first she was a little bit too young to understand it, so I showed her clips first. Do you want to watch it? Yeah, we'll watch it. And now every time I see her, Barb, can we watch E.T.? She's only a little thing, And then the one Christmas I was stuck in England, it was COVID. I actually brought her an E.T. Doll
Yeah.
off Amazon. Unbeknownst to me, it was in Spanish. So, like when you pulled, instead of saying E.T. go home, it was something E.T. La Casa, She think, what the fuck's this? But when she unwrapped it, she was in shock and she threw it on the floor. This thing that she'd been watching on a screen was now actually in her hand.
And it freaked her out.
And it freaked her out, But yeah, I mean, for me, E.T. is a movie I have watched it, oh my God, 50 times, E.T. It's just one of them. And again, it's just the music of John Williams. The score in that movie is really, really underrated for me anyway, And the kids, a young Drew Barrymore, where she steals a kiss off E.T. at the end of the movie.
She's probably on cocaine.
Well, I mean, she probably was after that movie was made when she was growing up. She was hanging out with
No shit, her dad.
the one, what's her name, Love? Courtney Love.
Yeah.
She was hanging out with her like
her parents were giving her drugs.
Oh, more than likely.
She tried cocaine when she was.
Well, interestingly, they had to go to school on set, the kids, because Spielberg said, look, you're all of school age, and I don't want you missing your education. And they all had to go to school. But a lot of that, like shooting the movie, I guess they was really all surprised how popular it was, because shooting the movie, they wasn't hearing anything apart from Spielberg saying, okay, E.T. has now said this, that, and the other. And then they add the voice in sort of like post-editing stage. I just thought it was and the beauty of it is you don't see the bad guy until later on in the movie. All you see is his keys hanging off his trousers.
Symbolism.
You see him walking, and you know he's the bad guy, Or you think he's the bad guy, and you just know him by the rattling.
In
of
my
his
number
keys.
one, you know the bad guy by his sunglasses.
Right.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and you're right, it is symbolism.
Yeah.
But in this movie, it turns out that the guy who is this bad guy working for the government, or you perceive to be a bad guy, isn't bad at all. He wants to see E.T. He's wanted it all his life. He's wanted to see a creature from sort of like an alien being. And of course, when E.T. dies in the movie and then comes back to life, it's one of them moments where you're on a roller coaster and you're exhilarated, and then
Isn't
all of
that
a sudden,
fantastic?
and then he dies, and the kid, and again, it's just great acting from this young lad who plays Elliot. And then he comes back to life, and he's coming back to life because as Elliot's walking out, the flowers that were previously dead start
blooming,
coming back to life again.
Yeah.
Just a brilliant touch. And I actually felt happy and sad at the end of that movie. Happy because E.T. finally went home, and without going home, he would have died. But sad for the boy that had lost his best friend. Yeah. And it really pulls at the fucking heartstrings. But that is all about sacrifice. The boy knew, I can't keep you. And then E.T. says, come with me. And he says, no, ouch, I can't go,
Can't do it.
So for me, just a fantastic movie. We're going to wrap things up because the power's about to go on air. I've really got to sort this laptop. It's a brand new laptop, and it's not even lasting 3 hours. But we're going to jump into part 2 on our next video. We really hope you've enjoyed it, certainly as much as I have. I've really enjoyed this. I now know 3 movies that I'm going to watch, what Jeff has said, and I can't wait to hear number 2 and number 1, and also the ones that he's got that didn't quite make it, same as me, Yeah. Jeff, anything to say?
No. Over my lifetime, people ask me, what are your favorite movies? And you say something, and they say why, and you really can't get into it,
but
right?
This is the reason why it's good to get into this stuff. Like with E.T., you asked me a question earlier, if one came down, would you go with them? And I said, no, when I was younger, possibly would. And I just think, like with E.T., that is probably something I would have done at that age, is like, look after this being as much as I could. Yeah.
But now
not so much. With what's going on, if these stories are true, what we're hearing, that these things are flying over military bases and nuclear-powered ships out in the ocean.
Can we even be sure they're nuclear powered? I mean, that is the thing. If they're traveling across the galaxy, who the fuck knows what technology they are using?
Before we go, there's brilliant footage. There's a show on Netflix, Alien Investigation.
Yes.
It's a shit
It's
title.
on my list.
It's a really bad title. It's a turn-off of a title. Yeah. But it's George Knapp, who is... George Knapp works for a newspaper out in Vegas, and he's the one that wrote the Bob Lazar story and, works off an area near Area 51. And he's pretty much the main guy in this new show. Anyway, during it, they filmed off the coast of California. It's called the Channel Islands, off the coast of California. There was a crew out there on a boat. They saw this object in the sky and they filmed it, and it was kind of meh. It was like a little blob. And then they sort of like retired for the night, and they said, let's set up a static camera, see if it comes back. Sure enough, you see this thing coming down, and it's a great video, and it just drops into the ocean and lights the ocean up as well. We got to go. It's been a blast. I've really enjoyed myself on this podcast. So we'll see you for part 2. Hope you enjoyed it.
Hey there, friends, come gather around. We're Bob and Jeff, and we're podcast bound. Sipping whiskey, brewing tales. Join us for laughs and all our fails. Come along for the ride. Two old guys bringing you laughter and wisdom. Oh my, come along for the ride. Like, subscribe, come along for the ride. Two boring old men, we're here with pride. Drop us an email, share your thoughts today. Join the fun, let's laugh the night away. Come along for the ride. Come along for the ride. Come along for the ride. So hit that button, don't be shy. Join our community, come on, oh my. With every episode we're building a crew. Your voice matters, we wanna hear from you. Like, subscribe, come along for the ride. Two boring old men, we're here with pride. Drop us an email, share your wildest dreams. Join the fun, we're bursting at the seams. Come along for the ride. Come along for the ride. Come along for the ride. So raise a glass and give us a cheer. Bob and Jeff, we're glad you're here. With every story, we'll make you smile. Two boring old men, let's chat for a while. Come along for the ride. Come along for the ride. Come along for the ride. Hey there, friends, come gather around. Bob and Jeff, and we're podcast bound. Sipping whiskey, brewing tales. Join us for laughs and all our fails. Come along for the ride. Come along for the ride. Come along for the ride. Hey there, friends, come gather around. We're Bob and Jeff, and we're podcast bound. Sipping whiskey, brewing tales. Join us for laughs and all